You take about 20,000 breaths today. You will not notice a single one. And according to a tradition far older than modern medicine, each of them is being quietly subtracted from a total you were born with. The ancients had a strange idea about the breath. They believed your life is not measured in years. It is measured in breaths. Breathe quickly, and you spend that life fast. Breathe slowly, and you stretch it across decades. For centuries, this sounded like nothing more than poetry. Then laboratories began to measure it, and the poetry started to look like physiology. What if the speed of your breath is silently setting the speed of your aging? Sit with that for a moment, because it changes how you see something you have done your entire life without thinking. The teaching comes from the yogis. In the old manual of Hatha Yoga, the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, written in the 15th century by a sage named Svatmarama, there is a line that has unsettled readers for 500 years. When the breath is unsteady, the mind is unsteady. When the breath is still, the mind becomes still. And tucked inside the same tradition is an even bolder claim, that every living creature is given a fixed number of breaths, and when they are spent, life ends. Look at the animals, the yogis said. The dog breathes fast, around 30 times a minute, and lives perhaps a decade. The tortoise breathes 3 or 4 times a minute and lives well past 100 years. They were not measuring oxygen, they were measuring pace. And so they built an entire science around slowing that pace down. They called it pranayama. Prana, meaning life force, the breath itself. Ayama, meaning to extend, to lengthen, to control. Pranayama is the deliberate slowing and shaping of the breath. And in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, the foundational text of all yoga, it is named as the fourth of 8 limbs, a gateway standing between the body and the mind. Why would breathing slowly do anything at all to how long you live? For most of history, no one could answer that. The answer was hidden inside your nervous system, waiting for instruments that could finally see it. Here is what fast breathing actually does to you. Your body runs on 2 opposing settings. One is the alarm, the sympathetic state, the part of you built for threat, for running, for fighting, for surviving the next 10 minutes. The other is repair, the parasympathetic state, the rest and digest mode, the part of you that heals tissue, lowers blood pressure, and slowly rebuilds the body while you rest. You are meant to move between them. Alarm during the day, repair at night. But something about modern life has jammed the switch. Most adults breathe between 12 and 20 times a minute, shallow and high in the chest, all day long. And here is the cruel detail. Rapid, shallow chest breathing is the exact pattern your body produces during fear. So even when nothing is wrong, the breath itself whispers to your brain that something is. The brain listens. It keeps the alarm running. It keeps releasing cortisol, the stress hormone, hour after hour, year after year. And chronically elevated cortisol is one of the most reliable accelerators of aging we know of. You were never in danger, but your breath kept telling you that you were. And the breath holds a position in your body that nothing else does. You cannot lower your blood pressure simply by deciding to. You cannot order your heart to slow or command your cortisol to fall. These systems run on their own, below the reach of your will. They belong to what is called the autonomic nervous system, the automatic one. The breath is the single exception. It runs automatically all day and all night, without a thought from you. And yet, the moment you choose to, you can take it over completely. Speed it up, slow it down, hold it still. The breath is the one door into the automatic body that opens from the inside. This is what the yogis understood and what we forgot. Slow the breath on purpose, and you reach everything the breath is wired to: the heart, the blood pressure, the nerves, the stress chemistry, all the machinery you can never command directly. They called the breath a bridge. a bridge between the part of you that you control and the vast part of you that you do not. In 2001, a physician named Luciano Bernardi published a study that should have made headlines for a decade. He brought people into his laboratory and had them recite two things: the Latin Ave Maria of the Catholic Rosary and a traditional yoga mantra from the Himalayan tradition. He was not interested in the words. He was interested in the breathing underneath them. And he found something remarkable. Both the rosary and the mantra, refined over many centuries by people who knew nothing of one another, slowed the breath to almost exactly the same rate, about 6 breaths per minute. At that precise pace, something extraordinary happened in the body. The rhythm of the breath, the rhythm of the heart, and the slow waves of blood pressure all slid into alignment, rising and falling together like instruments finding the same key. Bernardi had stumbled onto what is now called the resonance frequency of the human cardiovascular system, roughly 6 breaths a minute, about 10 seconds for each full breath. At that pace, a reflex in your body called the baroreflex, the system that quietly manages your blood pressure, reaches its maximum strength, and your heart rate variability climbs to its peak. Heart rate variability is the tiny natural variation in the time between one heartbeat and the next, and it matters far more than it sounds. High variability is one of the clearest signs of a flexible, resilient nervous system, and it tends to fall as we age and as we live under constant stress. Slow your breath to 6 a minute, and you push that number back up. You move yourself, breath by breath, out of alarm and into repair. The yogis found this frequency with no instruments at all. They found it by listening to their own bodies for a very long time. But slowing the heart is one thing, slowing aging is another. To connect the two, you have to travel all the way down to your chromosomes. At the end of every strand of your DNA sits a protective cap called a telomere. Picture the small plastic tip on the end of a shoelace, the part that keeps the lace from fraying. That is what a telomere does for your genetic code. Every time one of your cells divides, those caps grow a little shorter. When they wear down too far, the cell can no longer divide. It ages, it dies. And as more and more cells reach that point, so visibly do you. The biologist Elizabeth Blackburn won the Nobel Prize for this discovery, along with the enzyme that can rebuild those caps, an enzyme called telomerase. And then she, together with the health psychologist Elissa Epel, asked a question almost no one expected. Does stress wear the caps down faster? The answer was yes, and dramatically so. They found that women under chronic psychological stress had telomeres that looked, at a cellular level, as much as a full decade older than their actual age. Chronic stress was literally aging people from the inside out. So the next question followed on its own. If stress shortens the caps, can calm protect them? In a study known as the Shamatha Project, researchers led by Clifford Saron with Tonya Jacobs took people through weeks of sustained meditation and slow breathing, and then measured their telomerase, the rebuilding enzyme. It went up. The very enzyme that restores the protective caps on your DNA became more active in people who had spent weeks calming the breath and the mind. The physician Dean Ornish found something in the same direction. In people who adopted a calm, low-stress way of living, telomeres did not merely stop shortening. Over 5 years, they actually grew longer. Now follow the chain, link by link, because this is the whole secret. A slow breath calms the nervous system. A calm nervous system lowers cortisol. Lower cortisol means less wear on your telomeres. And protected telomeres mean cells that keep dividing, tissue that keeps repairing, a body that ages more slowly. The line from the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, that a life is spent along with its breath, turns out not to be poetry after all. It is a chain of biology, link by link, ending at the very tips of your chromosomes. But here is where almost everyone gets it wrong. When people hear that the breath is medicine, they do the obvious thing. They take an enormous, deep breath. They gulp in as much air as they can, chest rising, shoulders climbing toward the ears. And that is precisely the mistake. The secret of the ancient breath was never about taking in more air. It was about taking in less air and taking it slower. Overbreathing, pulling in big, fast lungfuls, actually flushes too much carbon dioxide out of your blood. And here is the part that surprises people. It is carbon dioxide that helps release oxygen from your blood into your waiting tissues. Breathe too hard, and you can leave your own cells starved of the very thing you were trying to give them. This is why the yogis breathed softly, quietly, through the nose, almost imperceptibly, as if trying not to disturb the air. And there is one final piece, the most important of all. It is not the inhale that heals you, it is the exhale. Your vagus nerve, the long wandering nerve that runs your entire rest and digest system, becomes most active as you breathe out. A short inhale followed by a long, slow exhale is like reaching directly into your nervous system and turning the dial toward calm. That is the entire trick the ancients spent lifetimes refining. Slow, soft, through the nose, and above all, a long exhale. So here is the ritual itself, stripped of all mystery, the way you might actually use it tonight. Sit or lie down, somewhere quiet, just before sleep. Close your mouth and breathe only through your nose. Breathe in gently for a count of 4. Then breathe out, slowly and softly, for a count of 6. Let the exhale always be longer than the inhale. That single ratio, in for 4 and out for 6, lands you close to 6 breaths a minute. The resonance frequency, the same pace Bernardi's reciting monks and Svatmarama's silent yogis arrived at from opposite ends of the earth. Do nothing else, just that breath, for about 8 minutes. If you want the older and fuller version, the yogis added a refinement called Nadi Shodhana, which simply means channel cleaning. It is alternate nostril breathing. You gently close one nostril, breathe in through the other, then switch, breathing out through the first, slow, even, and soundless. It feels like almost nothing while you do it, but underneath, your heart and your blood pressure are sliding into alignment. Your vagus nerve is switching the body into repair. Your cortisol is falling, and the slow erosion of your cells is, for these few minutes, quietly easing. 8 minutes, once a day. A practice older than every medicine in your cabinet, and one that modern science needed decades to catch up to. The ancients could not see your telomeres. They could not measure your heart rate variability. They had no word at all for cortisol. And yet, somehow, they were right. You will take about 20,000 breaths today. You were never meant to notice them. But tonight, slow just a few of them down. In for 4, out for 6, soft and through the nose. You have spent your whole life counting them without knowing. Now, at last, let them begin to count for you.